Up next, we have Mayur Dattar, Senior Vice President and Chief Data Scientist, and he'll be talking to us about some of the exciting work that we're doing with data science at Flipkart. In his current role as Chief Data Scientist, Mayur leads a large team of data scientists who are working on building the most advanced e-commerce landscape in India. Prior to joining Flipkart, Mayur worked with Google as a research scientist for over 12 years, and he holds a doctorate in computer science from Stanford University. He is known in the industry for his technical leadership, his pragmatic, result-oriented approach towards machine learning and systems design, and also his experience in the internet consumer-related challenges. To our attendees, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A tab for this session. You'll find it at the bottom of your screens, and we'll have Mayur answer them towards the end of his segment. Take it away, Mayur.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambika. First of all, good evening, folks. I hope you're all doing well. It's a pleasure to be here in front of all of you. And I really enjoyed the last session. You must have seen how a behemoth like Walmart is using AI ML in their retail business, right? What I'm going to talk about is how we are using, how Flipkart is using AI ML. In my role as Chief Data Scientist, like Ambika said, I lead the entire data science team here. And then it's really my privilege to lead such an amazing team working on such exciting problems. I think that's the part that really keeps us all engaged and happy here. And I think there are three main messages that I would like to give through this very brief talk, right? First of all, I want to impress upon you the scale at which Flipkart is operating in the Indian retail segment. Two, some of you sitting in the US may not completely appreciate what it means to operate in India. What are the challenges? And there are some really unique problems and sets of challenges that we see in the Indian market, right? And what kind of data science problems does that lead to, right? So that's the second part of the message that I want to convey. And the last bit is, of course, that look, we are having a lot of fun, and it's a great, exciting place to work for, and also showcase the diversity of the techniques that we are using while solving all of these problems. So without further ado, let's get into the talk. And let me begin with, like I said, giving you an idea about the scale at which Flipkart is operating in the e-commerce segment. Next slide, please. So as you can see the numbers on the screen, right? We have about 300 million registered customer base in India, 200,000 plus sellers, and about 150 million product listings on our platform. There have been about 150 million plus app downloads, and we are able to reach almost 100% of the pin codes in India, which is saying a lot given some of the remote destinations that are out there. And on a daily basis, we process to the tune of some 2.6 petabytes of data. Now, the first number itself should tell you a lot, right? 300 million registered customer base. I think other than a country like China, I don't think there's many other markets where you can think of numbers of this scale, right? Next slide. Let's look at the kind of data that we are collecting, right? On a typical day in Flipkart, and frankly, I have to be honest with you, these numbers are slightly outdated. So actually, we've even grown beyond these numbers, but these are from a few months back. So we get about 30 million visitors on a daily basis, which translates into about 50 million visits, 70 million searches or so, and close to a billion, about 3/4 billion page views. That's really a huge amount of data, right? If you think of it. Now, every year we run this big sale event that we call the Big Billion Day. In fact, we just concluded that for the 2021 year. And during a sale period like this, the numbers that you see on the left on a typical day, further get scaled by anywhere between 2x or 5x. So you will see 50, 100 million customers leading to 100, 200 million visits, about 200 million searches, and upwards of 2 or 3 billion page views every day. That's really a lot of data, and the way I put it, right? Like I said, on a typical day, we collect 20 terabytes of data, which during the sale period might go up to 100 terabytes on a daily basis. Now, being a data scientist, obviously this excites me, right? But it's not just the volume of data, right? What is exciting about e-commerce is the richness of the data. We have data about products, we have data about sellers, we have data about our customers, and the interaction and the correlation between all of these different entities, right? And I think that's what makes it really interesting and exciting. Once you have so much data, right, that's when you can feed this data hungry techniques like deep learning and so on and get some really insightful models out of it, right? And I think that's what makes the job of a data scientist here exciting and engaging. Next slide. Here are some of the technology platforms that we use to analyze this data. I'm sure many of you have seen these or are working with these: Kubernetes, Hive, Spark, Jupyter Notebooks. We have our own data lake that we call the Flipkart Data Platform, and so on and so forth, right? The purpose of this slide was to kind of give you some idea of the day-to-day tools and programming languages like Python, etc., that we are using to solve our machine learning and data science problems. Next slide. Now, sorry, go back. Yeah, thank you. Now, what is powering all of these tools is a really strong hardware component behind it, right? We operate out of 2 data centers, and the numbers that you see on the screen are the CPU nodes and the GPU nodes that are used only for the data processing and the data analytics side of the compute, right? So we have about 1,000 plus compute nodes, about 130 plus GPUs, a mix of V100s and A100s from NVIDIA, 15 plus terabytes of RAM for training, 60 petabytes of storage, and 1,000 plus CPU cores and prediction nodes for running your jobs, right? So that's a lot of compute power. And in fact, we can go even higher, right? This is a fraction of the total amount of compute hardware that we have in our data centers. And if needed, we can obviously go beyond this. So that's the other aspect of it, right? The data, the diversity of it, and the resources to actually analyze this data makes it such an exciting place to work for a data scientist. Next slide. And here's the last bit, right? I promised you earlier that, I'm sure many of you in the audience are data scientists, are working in the US or some other markets. But there's something unique about India, right? And I want to emphasize, what is it that makes India unique? What kind of challenges do you see when you're operating in a market like India? Next slide. We saw a little bit of this in the earlier talk as well. I think of India as almost like a European continent, right? Every state is like a country in Europe. We have so many states with so much diversity and 22 official languages plus hundreds of dialects, right? Obviously, 1.3 or 1.4 billion people is the scale is the population of the country. Now, why does culture matter, right? I mean, if you ask me as a data scientist, why should I care about it? When you are personalizing a particular product for a customer, it is important to be aware about their culture, right? A customer or customers sitting in Punjab who celebrate Lodi, for example, might be looking for very different kind of recommendations on that particular festival day, right? But on that day, you shouldn't be sending those recommendations to all of India. They don't care. They may not be celebrating that particular festival. Similarly, when it is Onam in Kerala, right? Or take saris, right? The kind of saris that are worn in West Bengal are very different from the kind of saris that are worn in Gujarat, right? And all of this matters when you're personalizing at a personal level. India is a country with low, as cost sensitive as Suresh puts it, with low purchasing power, right? So the margins at which we operate are very thin, and the cost of fulfillment has to be kept at a minimum. That's where technologies like AI, ML play a big role. Literacy levels, particularly, literacy about English is very low in India. And what I've shown there are the kinds of queries that you see in India, right? They make a lot of spelling mistakes, but the spelling mistakes, there's a method to that madness, right? If you look at it, they understand the phonetics behind it, right? They've heard the word jeans, but they don't understand what is the right spelling for it. And sometimes they take a Hindi word and will write it in English, like jute. It's not jute out there, but jute, right? And then there's poor infrastructure. So all of these give rise to very unique kind of problems. Like for poor infrastructure, right? We have people in India who sit in crowded homes where everybody else is talking, and that really makes the job of a data scientist working on a speech recognition problem that much more harder. And they have to worry about many other factors in terms of noise cancellation, worrying about a secondary speaker, and so on and so forth. So the point I'm trying to make is that these have very real implications on the problems that we solve, and they make them that much more challenging. Next slide, please. I think Suresh talked about it a little bit. If you think of an e-commerce platform, right, you have sellers on one side, you have customers on the other side, and what connects these two is the e-commerce platform. And the boxes that you see here are the various functional units or modules or product features that we have built, things like quality and selection, pricing and onboarding, right? Then on the customer side, you have search, recommendations, cataloging, payment, advertising, and so on and so forth, right? And then there are some certain modules which are cross-cutting in the sense they apply to both sellers as well as customers, things like personalization, trust and fraud detection, acquisition and retention, and so on and so forth. At the core of all of this is a very strong supply chain system, which includes modules like inventory planning, forecasting, the actual supply chain assets itself, like your warehouses, delivery hubs, and so on and so forth, accounting, and so on. Now, let me assure you that data science has a key role to play in each and every component that you see here on the screen here. And what I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes is to just give you a sample. Mind you, it's just a sample of the kinds of problems that we work at Flipkart, so that you get a flavor of what we are doing here, and also to showcase the different kinds of techniques and technologies that we are building to solve some of these problems. Next slide. So let's start with search, right? Search in itself is a huge area. It has subcomponents like auto suggestions or query completion, augmentation, which is correcting your spellings, the spelling of the queries, expanding those queries into synonyms, and so on and so forth, right? Then there's a part of intent understanding. E-commerce queries have a semi-structured aspect to it, right? When somebody types in red Adidas shoes, there's a lot of structure in that query. The user is telling us that I'm looking for a product in the category shoes where brand equal to Adidas and color equal to red, right? It's very easy for a user to understand this, but for a computer system to make sense like that is very hard. And that's what we refer to as the named entity recognition problem. I can go on and on, but to the kinds of technologies that we use here are a lot of these language models using some of the latest and greatest techniques in terms of your attention models like BERT. Then you have your sequence to sequence models, which use bi-LSTMs. And in addition to that, we are using learning to RAG. In many cases, we use simple techniques like GBDTs or logistic regression. So there's a lot of mix going on in terms of technologies to solve the search problem. Next slide. Merchandising and advertising. Like, I don't know if some of you are working in online advertising. At the heart of it, what you have is you're showing content to your users, whether it is a recommendation, whether it is some offer that is shown on a home page, whether it is some promotion about a particular category or a brand on a home page, and so on and so forth, right? And every time what you're doing is making a choice between the different types of contents that you have and which one to show to your user. Now, what is required to do all of this, at the core of it, is predicting the click-through rate, which is the engagement, and the conversion rate of every piece of content that you show to the users. And this requires, this is what is known as a user response modeling. You take into account the context and you predict the click-through rates. You've built systems using state-of-the-art online algorithms called FTRL, or follow the regularized leader. And we have dozens of these models which are operating at a very high scale. There are some models which go through billions of data points every day using a single core. And these are online models which adapt very quickly to changing data patterns, literally every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, which is very crucial when you're dealing with sale periods and so on. Next slide, please. Here's another interesting thing that we are working on, which is automatically creating these advertisements or promotions, right? So what you see on the top is a very high-res, high-quality picture taken in a studio. And how do you reuse that particular picture to create, banner ads or call-outs to user, right? So we use computer algorithms to do a smart cropping of the image, and then put a call out there to our users, right? And that also involves being smart about extending the background using the same colors and tones and shades and so on and so forth. What you see at the bottom is how do you create a personalized call out for a particular category. So you take the product images of different products in a category. Here what you are shown is the large category, and then you put them together in the right order, the right overlap and so on, and then you create an ad for that particular category. So this is just something exciting and uses computer vision, where you need to understand every aspect of the image. You need to do object detection. You need to figure out what is occluding what and so on and so forth, right? So just something new and exciting that I wanted to share with you. Next one. Then you have areas like user acquisition and retention, which use kind of more traditional NLP techniques like sentiment analysis. They might use part of speech tagging. So we get a lot of reviews, product reviews from our customers, right? And we try to make sense out of these reviews. First of all, which are the high quality reviews, right? So that when you come to a product, you want to see the most informative reviews on the top. Reviews that talk about a lot of aspects about the products, which use well-formed language, and then we extract information out of these reviews, right? Like I said, what aspects are they talking about, and what is the sentiment behind those aspects? So, for example, you might have a review about a mobile phone, and it might say that the battery is great, but the camera is really not good. Particularly, it does not work in low light conditions, right? So there, what we figure out is, okay, battery life is great, camera not so good, right? And then we do this across multiple reviews and come out with we have a product feature where we show you, what the quality of that particular product is in each of these aspects, and that has proven to be very useful for users when making a decision. Similarly, when it comes to question answering, we figure out, is this question already been answered? Is there another duplicate question, like I said, right? Or can we tag it to a particular customer, or tag it to a particular review and answer the question based on that? So those are some of the techniques used in the user acquisition and retention team. Next one. Machine translation. I think this is one place that I want to emphasize, right? As we've seen, and we'll talk a lot about this over the next few sessions as well, right? The next set of users that are coming online and coming onto our platform don't speak English, right? They need content in their own languages. And then it's not just Hindi. It is all the important languages in India, like, Punjabi, Bengali, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, and so on and so forth, right? So you have to take the entire content of a app, be it catalog, be it user-generated content like reviews, question answers, and whether it is search queries, and you need to translate that. We built our own in-house machine translation system for a variety of these languages. And the reason we had to do it in-house is because what we noticed is that existing solutions that are out there don't actually measure up to the quality that we need here, right? And there's a reason for it. The kind of language model that you see in e-commerce, right? It's a domain-specific language. And on top of it, when it comes to user-generated content, you see a lot of spelling mistakes, you see a lot of use of emojis, you see a lot of slang, and so on and so forth, right? And in such a context, in such a scenario, some of the translation products that are out there just don't make it. They are really embarrassing, to say the least. And then we'll see some of these examples later on in some of the talks that we have. So we've done this in-house. And it's powering a lot of our vernacular apps. We have vernacular apps in about 11 languages. Next. And in terms of the technologies, what we use here are, again, a lot of deep learning, machine translation models. I think, I can go on, and I have a couple of other slides, but I'm going to be a little fast in the interest of time, right? Then there is user modeling or personalization, right? How do you understand the user? Where does he come from? What are his demographics, right? Perceived demographics. What is the long-term value that this user brings to our platform? What are the affinities that this user has in terms of brands, in terms of categories, or in terms of price sensitivity, right? We look at all of the browsing data, purchase data about this user and build these kinds of insights. And here we use a lot of simple techniques with smoothing, using predictive analytics for customer lifetime value, using regression techniques, and so on. Next one. This is the core of our supply chain. Like I said, we need to get really, really, really accurate in terms of forecasting the demand for each and every product at a product level, at a category level, and other intermediate levels, right? These forecasts feed into various aspects of our supply chain operations. And we've been using a lot of statistical techniques like ARIMA to do this. And of late, we've been using deep learning techniques to build this demand forecast. In addition to this, we use many other techniques from operations research, like min-max flow and so on, to build a more efficient supply chain network, to come up with the right networks for line haul and so on and so forth. It's very different from some of the things that you've seen earlier, right? But that's what we use in planning. Next. And this is the final slide that I'm going to talk about, where trust and safety. I alluded earlier that fraud is a very big problem in India, right? We see fraud from customers, we see fraud from sellers, we see fraud even from our own delivery executives, and sometimes they work in collusion, right? So there's a lot of fraud that is going on. Examples include reseller fraud, where customers will try to create multiple accounts to stay below the radar, to circumvent some of our policies. Like, for example, a mobile that is on sale, we might allow you to only buy one item of it, right? But by creating 50 different accounts by slightly different names, addresses, and so on, you might be able to purchase 50 of these and then resell them into the physical market, right? We don't allow that. So how do you catch this thing? You'll always see these articles about, I got a soap bar when I ordered an iPhone, right? Those are very rare, but they make a lot of bad press for the company, right? So how do you catch these kinds of things? So the challenge in these problems is that there's an immense amount of data skew, right? The amount of fraud that happens is minuscule, like 1% or even less, right? So what are the right techniques to use when there is so much data skew in your, there's so much skew in your data, right? In terms of techniques, what we use here are again predictive analytic techniques using GBDTs and so on. Next slide. So hopefully, the purpose, I know it's been a little fast, but the purpose of showcasing all of these problems, and mind you, these are just a sample, is to tell you the diversity of the problems we are working on, and also the diversity of the techniques that we are using to solve them. I'm just going to showcase two recent launches that we did. One was in the area of decision assistant, and in fact, this particular work was done by the team in the US, the R&D team in US that is hosting the conference. And the problem here is very simple, right? If you're a user who's analyzing or researching a particular product, you have a lot of questions about the product specifications, questions about what offers are going on the product, or maybe questions related to payments and so on, right? And you would like to ask these questions to somebody. And what we've built is a bot that uses diverse information across product specs, product descriptions, user-generated content in form of reviews, question answers, and does its best to answer the question that you have, understanding what is the intent of the question and giving you the best answer from one of these sources. A lot of techniques go into this, again, based on deep learning, based on language models and sequence-to-sequence learning. And what we've seen is that the accuracy of our question answering is upwards of 85%. So this is a launch that we did recently, and I'm very proud of the US team for doing that. Next one. Finally, this is a model that we built to correct the spelling mistakes that we get in our search queries, right? And what is unique about this is, again, it caters to the India market. What we do is we take English keywords, which we see quite often, and then we try to predict the kinds of spelling mistakes that people will do when writing this, right? So people who are not familiar with English, but who try to spell it out phonetically. So that's how we've created a lot of, in addition to real pairs of correct query and its spelling mistake variant, we've also done a lot of data augmentation techniques, like I said, using the phonetic based pattern that we see in the spelling mistakes, and we've built a deep learning model based on it. And it has seen tremendous, we've seen tremendous gains in terms of our accuracy, which has led to improved click-through rates in our search results and so on. So you can see a screenshot of how somebody misspelled scissors and the kinds of results we were showing earlier before this model was launched, and now how we are showing the right results. Next slide. So, we are a team whose primary focus is obviously to have business impact and have a lot of fun in doing that, right? But the good news is that the kinds of problems that we see in the India context are very challenging. To solve this, we have no choice but to use some of the latest research that is out there. So we use a lot of, we read a lot of papers from some of the most recent conferences, and even those sometimes are not enough. We need to innovate on top of it, right? So I'm very proud to say that we innovate a lot, and we also encourage a lot of publishing. Next slide. So these are some of the papers that we've published in spite of being a small team, in spite of our focus on business impact. These are some of the papers that we've published in some of the top tier conferences over the last a year or so. Next slide. In addition to this, we also collaborate a lot with some of the top universities in India, your IITs, your ISCs, and so on. And these are some of the faculty. Some of you might recognize some of these names. These are very well known in research. For all you know, they might have been your professors in some cases. And these are some of the people that we are collaborating with to solve some of these challenging problems. Next slide. And this is some of the press coverage that we've received for our innovation, for our collaborations with universities and so on in the India context. So anyway, I guess I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your time. And again, what I wanted to showcase here was some of the challenging problems that we are working on, the diversity of the techniques that we are using, and just the unique challenges corresponding to India. I hope you like this, and I hope you find this interesting enough that you will consider an opportunity with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Mayur. I'm just going to throw the first question your way, and then you can take a look at the rest. The first one has come in from Charjit, and the question is, how can a new company which is B2B, how can they make use of ML and AI like Flipkart is using it now?
Well, look, I mean, even for a B2B company, it really depends on what you're trying to solve, right? And what are your data assets? Now, sometimes you might have data that you collect in terms of your interactions with your customers, or sometimes it might be some publicly available data. I think perhaps, if I understand your question, probably referring to the challenge that a B2B company typically does not have the scale like a B2C company in terms of user interaction data and so on, right? And I think that is fair. But it's not just about user interaction data, right? There's other types of data, including external data sources that you could use to solve some of the problems. Obviously, it'll depend on what problems you're solving, and you'll have to be smart about where you get your data from. Next question.
Thanks, Mayur. We'll go with the next one from Yogesh. How are we implementing cognitive science or behavioral science concepts? Will we be creating specific roles in this area, for example, behavioral architects?
That's a great question, right? I think in general, as you've seen in the previous talk, like using AI ML to solve some of the basic cognitive tasks, whether it is in computer vision, speech, etc., is it powers a lot of the use cases and that we are seeing here, right? And when we are building our chatbots, we do take into account behavioral sciences, and we have a smart team of designers, user researchers who come up with the right design for what the flow of the conversation will look like, where will AI ML be used, where it will be rule based, and so on, right? So we do take some of those research into account in building our chat interfaces. For computer vision and so on, we are using some of these things to make operations much more effective and much more efficient. So building the right kinds of interfaces, including human in the loop kind of or models, is what we are doing there by taking into account some of the behavioral science concepts. Next question.
In the interest of time, I'll just take one more question. This one's from Venu. How does a company like Flipkart deal with huge data? Do they use any high-end GPUs for processing?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, the answer is yes. I think you must have seen in my slides earlier. We do use GPUs, and particularly for building deep learning models where there's a lot of TensorFlow kind of a tensor computation that is going on, right? Obviously, those are the areas where GPUs make a lot of difference. So yes, the answer is yes, we do use GPUs, but oftentimes it's doesn't have to be GPUs, particularly for predictive analytics, for building logistic regression techniques, where also there's huge amounts of data, right? I alluded to one model, which is a logistic regression model built on Go, and on a single core, it can handle 1 billion data points in a day, right? So it does not always have to be GPUs. By being smart about it, by using really optimized code, you can get a lot out of CPUs as well. Hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Mayur. I think we'll move on to the next session in the interest of time.